Isla adjusted the calibration unit on her forearm, the hum of the orbital trade station around her as routine as breathing. Technicians didn't get into trouble, not if they kept to their maintenance corridors and their mouths shut. But today, trouble had arrived in the form of a heavily damaged Kothrex warbeast that had crashed through the upper docking bay and slid down into the reactor shaft, trailing sparks, blood, and shredded plating. The creature wasn't just a war machine. It was half-living tissue fused with dense alloy bones and bound in electromagnetic plating. Biomech dragons, that's what most species called them. Earth's alliance had never been allowed near one, not up close. The Kothrex kept their secrets guarded. But now, this one lay trapped and twitching beneath the coils and conduits of the main power spine. Its legs were tangled in collapsed support mesh. Its breathing was ragged, labored. Its tail sparked against the containment field. Station protocols were clear: do not engage with Kothrex property. Hostile species. No interference. No repair. No rescue. Isla stood at the edge of the access tunnel, her helmet's visor glowing blue as she zoomed in. Internal sensors flickered on her HUD, unstable energy signatures, disrupted neurofeedback loops, pain indexes surging. The war dragon was conscious and suffering. Its optic ridges opened weakly and met her gaze. Not mechanical coldness. Not blind rage. There was confusion. Fear. Pain. She felt it in the way its long claws curled, not in defense, but in desperation. She should have turned away. Called command. Let the cleanup crew vaporize it once the sector cooled. But she didn't. Instead, Isla descended, one hand on her stabilizer grip, another pulling a bundled set of fusion cutters from her hip rig. She climbed over support braces, crawled past dangling high-voltage cables, and approached the fallen creature. It didn't growl. It didn't flare its defensive plating. It just trembled. Sparks burst from an exposed node near its chest, and a faint series of pulses escaped. A failed attempt at communication, maybe. A message blinked in her interface. Warning: electromagnetic surge risk. Bioneural circuitry unstable. She crouched near the dragon's neck joint, studying the cable matrix woven into the side of its skull. Some wires were fused, others twitching like muscles reacting to electric shocks. One thick neural strand had wrapped itself into a knot, overheating, melting into nearby supports. That was the problem. It was cooking itself alive from the inside. Isla's mind raced. If she left it, the creature would either explode or suffer until it died. If she cut the wrong wire, it could fry her suit's insulation or worse, trigger a core feedback. But she'd seen something similar once, on a human freighter where an automech got caught in a data loop. Her hands moved before she could talk herself out of it. She slid a stabilizer under the main tendon arc, then isolated the overloading nerve strand with 2 fine clamps. Sweat beaded down her back. The creature gave a low, almost pitiful whine. Isla whispered, I know, though she knew it couldn't understand. With a single, precise movement, she sliced the overcharged wire. The reaction was instant. Its body arched, a howl echoed down the shaft, and a wave of static burst outward, nearly knocking her off balance. Station lights flickered. Her helmet dimmed for a second, then rebooted. She ducked. Nothing blew. No cascade failure. The reactor field held steady. The cable writhed a moment, then went limp. When she looked up, the dragon's breathing had slowed. No more sparks. No more flashing neural storms. Its massive eyes met hers again, and this time, it blinked. Once. Slowly. Her comms flared. Unauthorized presence detected in the reactor shaft. Technician Isla Marin, report your location immediately. She muted the call. Her gaze remained locked with the dragon's. Something had shifted in the air. Not just power balance, but something far deeper. This wasn't just a machine freed from a faulty circuit. This was a prisoner released from a cage. And she had cut the chain. Isla stayed crouched in the shaft, her fingers still warm from the blade's spark. The silence that followed the wire cut pressed against her ears like pressure from deep water. No explosion. No surge. The reactor core remained stable. The dragon was alive, but motionless, its body in temporary stasis. Her HUD flickered with red alerts: unauthorized proximity, system interference, violation of interspecies safety protocol. Her badge number was already flagged. She knew what was coming. She didn't move. The creature's breathing was shallow but steady. Its core temperature, previously spiking, now read within non-lethal parameters. She'd disrupted the pain circuit, not disabled it completely. That decision had saved its life. But cutting the control strand could mean something far more dangerous. The Kothrex built these beasts with embedded override wires, deeply rooted in the spinal cortex. Slicing one could disable the master link to their command chain. It might also unlock free cognitive processing. She didn't tell herself this was some noble act. She hadn't done it for diplomacy or political protest. She'd seen a living being caught in a loop of agony, and she'd acted. Now she had to deal with the fallout. The pressure clamp in her tool belt vibrated, a silent alarm. Security systems were beginning sweep patterns. Infrared lenses. Motion tracking. They'd know exactly where she was within 5 minutes. If they didn't shoot her on sight, they'd drag her to a tribunal. Tampering with foreign war tech wasn't just reckless, it was considered sabotage. Even unintentional aid to hostile assets was prosecutable. But leaving now felt wrong. The dragon's optic sensors were watching her, still weak, but aware. It wasn't a tool waiting for orders. It was listening. She checked her internal logs. Pulse sequence from the dragon's neural net had stabilized, but something new emerged, signal pulses that resembled syntax. Not human language, but rhythmic enough to imply structure. A message? No translation matrix could read it. She tapped into her suit's manual decoding subroutine and ran the feed through pattern filters. The output was crude but undeniable, a repeating phrase. Pain ended. Why? ***. She stared at the interface. The creature was trying to understand her. Not just identify, but comprehend her motive. She reached up and tapped her helmet's vocal relay, slowing her breath. Because you were dying, she said quietly. And no one else was going to stop it. The dragon blinked once. A pause followed. Then another pulse. Different now. Short bursts, small loops. Not Kothrex. Not slave. Who you? ***. She hesitated. This was far beyond protocol. Her voice barely above a whisper, she replied. Technician. Isla Marin. Human. Another pause. Then one more set of pulses. Cut pain. Cut control. Free? ***. Her stomach dropped. She hadn't just stopped suffering, she had possibly severed the command leash. These creatures weren't supposed to think for themselves. If this one now could, then the consequences were staggering. Not just for her, but for every alliance treaty in this sector. Another relay lit up. She ignored it. A crackling surge shook the lower supports as a reinitialization protocol activated above them. The station was rebooting containment systems. Lockdown in less than 3 minutes. She had to move. But leaving meant abandoning something that might never happen again, a sentient, sovereign mind born not through war, but through mercy. She pulled out her side module, accessed the emergency energy transducer, and slid it toward the dragon. Take it, she said. Recharge. Get stable. The dragon didn't move for a beat. Then its claw scraped forward. Not an attack. A reach. It took the device, curled it against its core plate, and let its body absorb the charge. Slowly, a light shimmer returned across its biometal frame. Its pulses slowed. Steady. Rhythmic. Calm. Stay? She should have run. Security was already locking outer corridors. Her boots were magnetized for emergency climbs, but she didn't move. She leaned against the wall, eyes on the creature, heart steady. She wasn't just a technician anymore. She was the first human to offer help to a Kothrex war beast without fear or reward. No one would understand it. They'd say she acted recklessly, emotionally, irrationally. But for the first time in her career, she didn't care. The creature looked at her, and this time, its pulse said nothing. It simply watched. Quietly alive. No longer a weapon. Just something else. Something free. The shaft was dark except for the flickering core light and the dim glow pulsing from the dragon's internal nodes. Isla sat with her back to a curved support beam, breathing through the filtered mask. The silence wasn't peaceful, it carried tension, as if the station itself were holding its breath. Minutes passed, but no reinforcements arrived. Emergency systems had triggered isolation seals, locking down the sector after her unauthorized entry. She and the dragon were effectively sealed off, left in a bubble of steel and heat, with no backup and no instruction. She checked the time. 43 minutes since the initial breach. Her oxygen supply would hold for hours, but without override access, there was no way to exit the shaft. The emergency hatch had fused when the creature's impact overloaded the local grid. She tried hailing the central system, but the AI wouldn't recognize her credentials after the protocol breach. Across from her, the dragon stirred. Its limbs twitched in minor intervals, not in pain, but recalibrating. Systems realigning. Its optic field adjusted, targeting her again. No aggression. No hostility. Only observation. Isla watched it too, noting the subtle changes. Its chest panel had folded inward to protect exposed circuits, and tiny fiber lines along its shoulders were knitting themselves shut. The living part of its body was repairing with visible intention. She reached into her kit, pulled out a nutrient strip, and chewed slowly, forcing herself to conserve energy. Her mind, however, didn't rest. She kept reviewing the signals it had sent before. The phrasing. The structure. The awareness. This thing wasn't just a machine executing broken commands, it was asking questions. It understood context. Another pulse reached her wrist display. Not from the station. From the dragon. Memory clouded. Darkness before. Now light. Why? Asterisk asterisk. She blinked, scrolling through the translation log to verify. It had sent the signal directly through local EM field manipulation, like it had reverse-engineered how to communicate with her suit. No Kothrex data ever suggested such adaptability. These beasts were thought to operate only under strict algorithmic parameters. What she was seeing defied every known technical brief. She tapped back. Because no one's forced you to obey right now. You're thinking for yourself. A few seconds passed. The creature's next pulse was slower. Pain made silence. Control made numb. Now backslash, noise. Feel. Think. This human. Why change? Asterisk asterisk. I didn't plan it, she answered, voice low. You were suffering. I couldn't watch that happen and walk away. The dragon lowered its head, its gaze still fixed on her. The atmosphere inside the shaft was changing, less defensive, more open. Like it was assessing her not as a variable in a problem, but as a person. Another pulse. Human chooses without command. What is this? Asterisk asterisk. It's called empathy. The reply didn't come immediately. Instead, the dragon slowly extended a connector from beneath its armor plating. A short, twitching strand, possibly an interface node. It pulsed softly, hovering halfway between them. Isla knew what it was. Neural link. Meant for direct control by Kothrex officers. It was never designed for humans. The chance of neurological overload was real. But she understood the offer. I'm not Kothrex, she said quietly. I can't command you. But I'll listen. She reached out, pressed her glove to the node. Pain slammed into her skull, sharp and dizzying, but only for a second. Then images followed, unfiltered, chaotic impressions of battles, fires, screams. She saw herself from its perspective, first as a threat, then a curiosity, then something different. Then nothing. Peace. Warmth. She pulled her hand back, gasping, but not injured. The link retracted. The creature's eyes dimmed for a moment, then steadied. You did not take. You gave. Asterisk asterisk. She nodded, words failing. The creature shifted, dragging itself closer. No tension in its frame. No suspicion. Only recognition. They were trapped together, but something important had changed. Two beings, once locked into opposing definitions, war beast and technician, were now something else. Equals. Strangers turned allies. No orders. No mission. Just a human who made a choice, and a dragon learning what it meant to be free. The isolation seal disengaged with a sudden thud, followed by the metallic hiss of pressure equalizing. Isla snapped upright. The interface link with the dragon had ended moments ago, leaving a faint ache behind her eyes but no damage. She didn't need diagnostics to know the breach meant one thing: security had overridden the system lockdown. They were coming. The dragon rose with mechanical grace, joints clicking as it stood. Its injuries remained, but its posture had changed, no longer defensive or weak. Alert. Calm. Calculating. It scanned the shaft, eyes narrowing toward the access corridor. Both of them knew what was next. Bufalls echoed beyond the wall. Heavy, synchronized. Station enforcers. Human personnel. Armed. They'd see the wreckage, the unauthorized proximity, the unauthorized interface, and a live Kothrax warbeast standing near a human technician. Protocol dictated elimination. Isla's comms flared to life. Technician Marin, stand down. Move away from the entity. She didn't answer. Her suit's sensors picked up weapon charges powering up. 3, maybe 4 officers. The dragon's eyes locked on hers. Not a plea. Not fear. Just one silent question: stay or run? She stepped between the creature and the corridor. Arms out. Hands empty. She knew the rules. But rules didn't matter now. One of the soldiers emerged, weapon raised. He froze at the sight. Another voice barked. Back away! That thing is classified. It's not a threat, Isla interrupted. Behind her, the dragon didn't move. It waited. The men weren't ready for that. They expected aggression. They expected a fight. Lie down! One shouted. It's unarmed, she said. It's a weapon. It chose not to kill me. Isn't that worth something? That gave them pause. But tension didn't fade. No one lowered their guns. The dragon's claws clicked on the floor. A warning? No. A signal. Isla didn't wait. She activated her suit's emergency discharge module, sending a shortwave burst through the floor. Lights flickered. Just enough to blind optics for a second. The dragon surged past her, not attacking, but leaping onto the wall's steel braces. Its tail swung once, slicing through a conduit and showering sparks across the hall. The soldiers dropped low. She turned and ran. The creature cleared the corridor in seconds, its damaged frame barely slowing it. Isla knew the back corridors better. Maintenance shafts ran like veins behind the infrastructure. She slipped into one, sealed the hatch behind her, and followed the sound of movement echoing ahead. When she caught up, the dragon had already begun shifting panels off an old cargo tunnel sealed since the last reconstruction. Its strength hadn't returned completely, but it moved with purpose. She didn't ask where it was going. She understood. Out. They navigated deeper, through rusted maintenance levels and unused tram lines. It took half an hour to reach the outer airlock. She patched into the control panel. Half the systems were defunct, overridden by newer installations. She pulled out a fusion torch and rewired the panel, fingers moving fast. Once the lock hissed open, she turned to it. You won't get far alone. You need energy. You're not stable. The dragon tilted its head. A low pulse hit her suit's translator. Gratitude. Not survival. Loyalty. Asterisk asterisk. She didn't respond. Couldn't. This thing had gone from target to prisoner to partner in hours. It stepped outside, into the frost-dusted dock platform exposed to deep space. Its wings, shredded, extended partially, barely functional. Yet it stood with pride. Then it turned back. From within its armor, it pulled a compact metallic object. It rolled it toward her, a core node, still glowing. She picked it up. Security core data. Full Cothrex network mapping signature. This wasn't a token. It was proof. Proof that what she'd done had severed more than wires. The dragon's pulse came once more. Free. Because human cut chains. I remember. I return. ***. Then it vanished into the void, using compressed jets from its side panels, disappearing into the night. Isla stared after it, holding the core. This wasn't over. Someone would want answers. Someone would want to know how a technician rewrote centuries of control by doing what no one else dared care. The outpost logs were wiped the next day. Official reports labeled the event a minor system malfunction. No mention of a war creature, no mention of unauthorized actions, and certainly no mention of Isla. She was reassigned quietly, pulled from field duty, transferred to a backwater repair depot on a low-traffic moon. No formal charges, no inquiry. Just silence. The kind of silence that came when higher powers didn't know how to explain what had happened, or didn't want to. She didn't argue. Didn't ask questions. She knew better. Bureaucracies didn't fear mistakes, they feared anomalies. And she'd become one. What she had done wasn't just unusual, it was destabilizing. Kindness wasn't supposed to override control code. A technician wasn't supposed to change the programming of an empire's most dangerous weapon. But she had. And the consequences hadn't ended when the dragon vanished. Weeks passed. She adapted to slower routines. Maintenance cycles. Sensor recalibration. Dusty consoles and near-total solitude. But every night, she checked the encrypted node left behind, the one the dragon had given her before it escaped. The data was vast, layered, and partially corrupted, but she decrypted piece after piece, learning more than she ever thought possible. Not just about Cothrex tech, but about the creatures themselves. About their design, their restrictions, the subroutines buried under layers of obedience. They were never just machines. They were living minds bent into forced simplicity. Not allowed to remember, question, or choose. Until now. The first transmission arrived on her private channel 31 days after the escape. A narrowbeam encrypted signal, too precise to be random noise. She checked the origin coordinates, deep within the asteroid belts of an abandoned mining sector. The message was brief: another awakens. Request assistance. ***. She stared at it for a long time. It wasn't signed, but she knew. The cadence, the structure, it was him. She replied only one word. Where? A second signal followed. Coordinates. No context. No promise. Just a place. She didn't report it. She packed what she could, left behind the depot, and rerouted a cargo shuttle to an unscheduled jump. Technically a violation. She didn't care. The asteroid belt was a jagged graveyard of forgotten stations and failed colonies. Amid the ruins, she found it, a derelict vessel marked with Cothrex symbols, its hull scarred and hollow. Inside were signs of recent habitation. Makeshift systems. Rewired generators. And not one, but 4 biomechanical dragons in various stages of awakening. The one she recognized, his plating now matte black, eyes sharper, stepped forward. No words. Just a shared look. A memory passed between them in silence. He wasn't alone anymore. Each creature bore subtle differences. Damage patterns. Variations in armor. Individuality. The leash of command had been severed from all of them. She spent days there, assisting, guiding, sharing knowledge. They listened. They learned. They began to speak, not in full sentences, but with intent. They didn't want revenge. They wanted identity. Purpose beyond service. They wanted to remember their own names, not the ones assigned by warlords. Word began to spread in hidden channels. Other technicians. Fringe sympathizers. Former Cothrex defectors. The story was out. Not the official one, but the truth. A human had broken the code. Others could follow. Soon, isolated pulses began to return from across sectors, damaged biomex pinging the same encrypted frequency. One had escaped confinement. Another had locked down its own programming. One had watched Isla's footage in silence, downloaded from pirated signals, and begun self-repair. The signal became a beacon. What she'd done was no longer a fluke. It was a movement. By the third month, the outpost held over a dozen biomex. All different. All free. Isla didn't give them orders. She offered options. Taught. Listened. Let them argue. Let them decide. The dragons began building things, devices to share their memories, structures for communication. They didn't want war. They wanted history. What had started as a technician's refusal to walk away from suffering had triggered something far more profound. She became known only by signal tags, no face, no rank. To those who followed the awakening, she was the first cut. The one who severed control and replaced it with choice. And across the galaxy, wherever sentient code flickered beneath chained flesh, a new phrase emerged in foreign tongues and alien pulses. Pain ended. Thought began. Because humans stayed.